Hey there, folks. My name is Misadventurer, and welcome to the first episode of the Xiongnu Campaign. This is going to be a brand new series here on the channel featuring Imperator Rome and a number of mods, particularly the Terra Indomita overhaul mod. I released a video a couple of days ago where I introduced that this campaign was coming up and talked a little bit about that mod. Basically, it is a version of the popular overhaul mod Imperator Invictus, which takes a slightly different design direction. It's actually a fork off of Invictus, so it uses some of the Invictus code and some of the mechanical changes. Also incorporates some other overhaul mods, including a pretty substantial map expansion mod, which includes into the game Asia. So we're going to be seeing some Asian shenanigans in this particular campaign. In fact, we'll be seeing them immediately because this campaign will be set in the new expanded area of the map. Finally, a campaign for this channel in the East. Very excited to sort of see that. In fact, this campaign will be pretty different from previous campaigns that I've done for a number of reasons. We'll talk about that in a moment. But first, I do want to note some logistic information about the series can be found in the description down below, including some information about my new weekly release schedule on Sundays at noon, as well as my new video length policy for this campaign. 55 to 60 minutes per episode is what I'm aiming at. And then lastly, a full list of all the mods we'll be seeing in this campaign. So check that out if you're interested. Let's go ahead and get started here. Now, there's a lot to do in this first video in terms of setup, but I'm really hoping I can move through it efficiently and get to an early November 1st war. We shall see how things pan out, but take a look at this map. This is a crazy change to the game. Look at all this terrain added in here, and it's at the same scale as the rest of the game. So it is very, very finely detailed. Lots of individual little provinces around here. Some of it's a little bit unfinished because this is, of course, all modded stuff, but as a aspiring modder myself, this is very high quality work from the mod team that made this expansion mod that was then integrated into Terra Indomita. So very, very impressive stuff. The detail and the amount of nations that have been simulated here is impressive for this much terrain to be added in. And we're going to be playing up here in the steppe areas, playing as Xiongnu, of course, as the name of the campaign implies. But I do want to quickly note that something that the version of Better UI added in by Terra Indomita brings to the campaign selection map is the different map modes, which is something I really appreciate. We can actually see the regions from this screen, which I really like. We're going to be playing up here in the Mobe region, and we're going to be talking actually a bit in this episode about the regions because they're going to matter quite a bit for this campaign. We'll talk about that again in a moment. Let's talk about Xiongnu. Now, Xiongnu is a migratory tribe, and I've never played as a migratory tribe on camera for a campaign yet. This will be the first time. And not only will this campaign start us off as a migratory tribe, we're going to be staying as a migratory tribe for quite a long time for reasons we'll talk about again in a moment. But migratory tribes are pretty similar to settled tribes, except they have a focus on reducing centralization over increasing it. You gain scaling militaristic bonuses for lower and lower centralization. It goes into the negatives. It can go as low as negative 100. You also have 2 military ideas instead of a military, and I think a civic is what the settled tribes get. And you get some tribesman output bonuses and some other stuff for your government type. Obviously pretty strong. Additionally, you're allowed to use the migration mechanic. The way migration works is for a stability cost, you can turn all of the pops in a tile that you control that's a settled tile, a settlement. You can turn all those pops into these migration units that are sort of like light infantry units you can move around on the map, and then you can relocate them either in other places you control or uncolonized areas to expand your nation into those areas using the migration mechanic and also the colonization mechanic, which migratory tribes also still have access to like everybody else. We're going to be able to take control of the many, many, many uncolonized areas of this barren wasteland part of the world. This is not a very lush area whatsoever. We're going to see how bad the climate really is once we take a look at our starting area, but we are really going to be dealing with some real terrible terrains. We're going to have to make use of a wide approach to development as opposed to concentrating on lush little areas of good, strong land. We're going to have to expand outward across the wasteland and expand our great name Xiongnu as we go. Now, to help us out with that is Xiongnu's absolutely busted heritage. Take a look at this. 8% discipline, 10% monthly influence. That is really, really, really good. and that's the main reason I'm playing as Xiongnu. I wanted to play as a sort of a steppe nomad style faction. I had quite a few to pick between. A really strong contender for second place was Yue Shi, for reasons we'll again talk about later in this video, as they're going to be relevant to this campaign quite a bit. But this heritage is very, very strong, and the malice you get, 5% monthly wage, is nowhere near enough to balance out these crazy advantages. I think that Xiongnu is actually a little overtuned at the moment, and I actually think they should probably rebalance this a little bit, reduce that discipline bonus at least. But I'm not going to complain while I can take advantage of it for this campaign. Let's read the lore here and get a sense of what's going on up here in the steppes at this point in time. So, a rising power on the Mongolian plateau, the Xiongnu Confederation was the major rival to the Yuezhi to the south, and dominated the cultural patterns of the area. They have since been connected to the Huns and their conquests across Eurasia. The Xiongnu was born from the Afanasevo archaeological culture of the Bronze Age, and then developed within the Pazyryk culture famous for its frozen mummies, including the Ice Princess. However, the Xiongnu were supposedly descended from the legendary Chunwei, whose lineage in turn came from a Lord Jia, also known as Yu the Great. Found north of the place known as the Wild Goose Gate, the Xiongnu were depicted as the polar opposite of the settled peoples of China, as the epitome of nomadism and barbarism. So in this campaign, we're going to be living up to those stereotypes about being barbarian nomads for quite a while here. But we have the migratory tribe government. We talked about that a moment ago. We've got Hu culture, or Hu religion. Hu is the native religion of the steppes areas and parts of sort of China and whatnot up here. Now the Hu religion gives us some pretty good bonuses, although this is not super important to this particular campaign. But these are pretty strong bonuses that synchronize well with a wide migratory style of gameplay, because commerce, I think, is a bit more reliable than tax for a very wide nation like this. And of course, tribesmen are the bulk of our nation, so commerce income bonus, tribesman happiness bonus, going to sync up well with the large, expansive migratory tribe gameplay style, so that's pretty handy. Life on the Great Steppes can be harsh, and the religion of its people is focused on the practicalities of everyday life, eschewing metaphysical mysteries for the realities that can be seen and observed. The sun, moon, heaven, and our honorable ancestors are worthy of veneration. So this is kind of a sort of a prototype or an early version of the Tengri religion we would see in this part of the world much later on. So we'll actually see that Tengri is one of the gods that the Hu worship, or that the Hu worshippers worship, I should say. We're also of Xiongnu culture, so that's going to be easy to remember because our name is Xiongnu. Xiongnu culture looks like it's a huge culture group, but this is, or a huge culture, and it's in the D culture group, by the way. But this is actually a bit of a visual trick. If you zoom in a bit closer, you can see that our territory is Xiongnu, the territory of our neighbor Zhihai is Xiongnu, I'll just switch back over here, and the territory of our neighbor Anhu is actually Xiongnu as well. And then south of us, Junji is Xiongnu, and then basically this sort of passageway of desert is all made up of Xiongnu, but this thing here isn't actually a nation. This is an impassable area of desert, no one lives here. So the Xiongnu culture is actually only held by us, the Anhu, the Zhihai, and the Junji, and then there's a bunch of uncolonized Jianzhu pops here and there. So although it looks like a huge culture, this is sort of not true. You have to look a bit more closely. Also noting that our culture group, the D culture group, and this very similarly looking culture group down here, where is it? The wrong culture group. They are in fact different. This sort of pinker one. There's also an even more pink one, the Hu culture group. So we need to make sure not to get these mixed up. And then of course there is some other cultures around us within the D culture group. Lufan, Chanlan, Linhu, and then up here the Dinglings, the Arzhans, and so on, so on. So we're going to have some cultural diversity, not so much religious diversity, although we are nearby the ritualistic area. This is part of the game that is in the base game and in Invictus, but then it expands out this direction. So there are quite a few ritualistic steppe nomads. I felt that playing as a Hu steppe nomad was a bit more appropriate. That's the main reason I decided not to go with Yuezhi, who does start as ritualistic. I just think that it's more interesting to play with the actual religion that sort of becomes Tengri later on, although Yuezhi gets some crazy advantages, and we'll talk about this in a moment, as it is going to play a role in actually our early game planning, as Yuezhi, as noted by our lore, is a historic rival of Xiongnu, and we're going to be facing them down in the near future. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, let's talk about our chief. Jihu, I think is how I'm going to pronounce this, Luandi, is our chief. I have re-rolled this many times as I prepared for this campaign, and 4 Marshal is the best I've ever been able to get. This is pretty bad, as our long-term plans to stay as a migratory tribe will trap us with our tribal chiefs for a long time, so that's not ideal. However, Yueishu, of all the chiefs that I've been able to reroll, does have the best traits, and his stats are the strongest aside from Marshal. So he's had the highest Marshal of anyone. 9 Finesse is obviously quite good, 9 Charisma is obviously really good, 4 Zeal is okay, but that's not as big of a deal for the tribal gameplay, I think. And then Jihu himself does have some good traits. He's got Disciplined, which in effect just gives his army better discipline, so that's pretty good. And then Energetic is kind of already being reflected through the stats that he has. He also has a wife and I think 2 children. I guess we'll take a look at it once we get into the game here. But he's 17 years old. He's a young man. His future is ahead of him. We'll hopefully have some ways to increase his martial. We'll talk about that again in a moment. Lots of stuff to talk about later on in this episode because these mods are changing so much. Then lastly, I just want to note that we do start with 12 territories, which sounds like a lot, and it's going to feel like a lot because each of these individual territories is a huge amount of space on the map. It's a little hard to make sense of out here where all the land is really, quite expansive. We can't compare it super easily, but the entire area of Xiongnu that we start with is actually the same size as the entire continent or the entire island of Hibernia, right? So the entire area of Hibernia is about the same size as our starting area. Actually, we have more than Hibernia does. We're actually almost more comparable to the island of Albion in terms of space. Once we control all the unsettled stuff, we will actually be comparable in size to Albion, similar in size to the Greece area. The area of Greece that is in sort of the southern Greek area south of Macedon, that area is actually smaller than our starting area. So this gives you a sense of how large each of these settlements are. They are at least a month apart, largely. Although with our cavalry armies, we're going to see in a moment, the journey won't feel quite as long. All that being said, we're in a very different part of the world. Also in a very northern part of the world. It's a little hard to make sense of because of the way the world is a globe in this game, but we basically, this direction is northwards. We're very far up in the north. We're in alpine climate. We have bad terrain everywhere. It's going to be interesting. Let's get started here. Now I'm going to turn Iron Man mode on as I usually do. This is just the way that I prefer to play the game. I'm going to leave mixed gender rules off as I prefer to play with the cultural rules of whatever I'm playing as. Dynastic names I'll turn on because I just like this for flavor. I will turn off the new Daidoki CB mechanics. This shouldn't substantively affect this campaign that much, but I do prefer the game without this turned on, as I figured out in my months of playing this game off camera. So let's go ahead and get started here as Xiongnu. Also, I should note that I don't speak any Asian languages at all, and let alone the ancient languages that these places are named through. So if I'm pronouncing something wrong, or you have questions about the way I pronounce something, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to get feedback. I'm just going to pronounce them as I think they are pronounced. Also noting that in this campaign, I'm not going to use my my traditional kind of flavor thing of using the Latin pronunciation of many of the words, because no one around here is speaking any Latin whatsoever. And with all of these sort of Asian names, the Latin pronunciation would make it even harder to make sense of what I'm saying. So we're just going to proceed here with the English pronunciations, or my best attempt at them. So Xiongnu Campaign, here we go. Terra Indomita. Terra Indomita is based upon Imperator Invictus and fully integrates all of the content in Invictus. Terra Indomita also uses the map and many other assets from the Chinese to the End of the World mod, and adds many great features from better UI and full mechanical overhaul. TI is meant to be a standalone mod which contains all the great content made by the Imperator modding community. Terra Indomita, and then it goes into the credits of Terra Indomita and all the other sort of sub-mods and whatnot. So you can read this if you want to, or look on their Steam page. Time to conquer the world. Here we go. Okay, so lots to do in this first episode. The first thing I'm going to do, which may be a little surprising, but this has to happen first, I'm going to fire everybody in my government. So we're going to just do this real quick here. Trust me, this is all part of the plan. I do have a goal here that I'm going to aim for. Basically, the AI, when you start the game, the computer does actually assign people to your government slots fairly intelligently, but it doesn't consider all the possible issues at work. So what you want to do is fire everybody. Let's see, is there enough loyalty left? Yeah, there is. Try and make sure that we don't have anyone lingering around, and then rehire everyone with the aim to have as high as possible of possible stats in their office once they have full stewardship, while also making sure that characters, for example, with multiple stats that they have a high value in, are placed in a position that offsets having other stat areas where no character has a high enough stat. So for example, this is maybe a little hard to make sense if you don't know what I'm talking about. Let's say that I happen to have only one character. Let's say that I have no characters in the game, and I do, but let's say I have no characters in the game with Omen above 7, right? And I want a high Omen character to be my High Priest. Now, let's say that I have multiple characters that have really high Martial, and one of them also has really high Omen. The game would randomly decide, okay, the character with high Martial and, or let's say high Omen, high Zeal. The character with high Martial and high Zeal would maybe become a Martial officer, and I wouldn't notice it because I wouldn't double check this, right? You can't easily compare it from the screen. So by firing everyone and then doing this manually, I'm making sure that if I have multiple characters of a high value in one stat, they're spread across so that they're also contributing to having high value characters in other stats, just to keep things balanced. And not every position is equally important. For example, High Priest, Bodyguard, and Elder are the most important for a tribal nation. Manpower, recovery speed, tribesman happiness, and omen power are going to play the biggest effect here. To some extent, things like Arbiter and War Chief are important as well, but something like Wise One, I can basically just throw some goofball in here who has low zeal. Because this isn't important, I'll just assign someone for family connections to make the families happy. But what we can also do first is go over to the researchers, check and see if anyone in our nation starts with any traits, and I don't think they will, because in my test games they don't. So we'll come back to the researchers at the end and basically assign any really low quality family characters into the research slots and make sure that we can then have really meritocratic characters in our government, because with our tribesman-oriented economy for this particular campaign early on, we're not going to have any research at all, although we do start with 4 innovations. We'll talk about that in a moment. Lots of things being put off until the next moment in this first episode, but let's get to it. So first of all, we're going to assign the Bodyguard first. This is the most important. We have a 10 martial character, Suxi Luandi from a ruling family. Let's see, 10. So this is a perfect example of a character that is asymmetrical. 10 martial, 1 in everything else. This character should be a priority for a martial position because there's no other stat that he could be assigned to except for a martial position that makes any sense. So assign him to be the Bodyguard, already giving 4.5% recovery speed, even at only 3 statesmanship, so that's pretty good. Next up, Elder. Let's see, so we have a 9, but he's not a family character. We'll come back to him. 8, who's a family character. Okay, yeah, so here's another asymmetrical character. So Q-Fiodi is going to be our Elder, another character from the ruling family, interestingly enough. And then lastly, I think High Priest is the next most important. So our highest quality High Priest here could be 6. So we're probably going to end up assigning a non-family character because this is an important position to have a really high stat character for. So we'll come back to this later. This guy I may actually go ahead and assign to a finesse position because he has 8 finesse. Whaley Rhodey. Probably going to assign him to be the Magistrate. I think that makes the most sense. And then let's come back over here. War Chief. Let's see. 7. Okay, this guy would be best as a martial character. Zubo Gudohu. Assign him. And then let's see here. We need 4 more. I'd be fine assigning. Actually, yeah. Let's see here. 7. Yeah, you'd be good as the Arbiter. Apothecary. 7. Alright, what do I need next? I need 1 Huyan and then I need 2 Dugus. Alright, let me go into these things here. Let's see what we got. 6, 5, 4, 3, so you'll be my martial guy. 4, 2, 2, 3. You'll be my zeal guy. Oh my gosh, this is pretty dire. Alright, let me actually replace. Let me back you out. Make you my civic guy. Yeah. So then you can be zeal. You can be martial. And then lastly for oratory. Let's see here. Assign a very high quality character here. And then for Wise One, so this is a low priority position, so let me see if I can move someone over to Wise One to free up, yeah, do it like that. Let's see. 8, 7. Anything above 7 that I can work with here. Let's see, we need 1 zeal, so it'd be 3 zeal, 6 zeal. Oh, no, 3 zeal, 0 zeal, 8, 4. Yeah, I think I'm gonna, let's see, 6 and 8. Yeah, I'm gonna switch it like this. All right, I'm gonna move you. Slightly better character. Oops, my bad. Slightly better character for War Chief. And then I'll move you to be the wise one. Yeah, there we go. And then over in the researcher area, we'll just assign someone for merit. We'll have a really competent charisma researcher, may as well. Because I think that my other charisma positions are already filled up in the best way they could be. Well, actually, no, that's wrong. Let me replace you with that researcher. Yeah. This may seem like way more micro than is necessary at the start of this game, but I do think it is important to maximize this stuff. Switch you with the guy that I just fired because he's a little better, and then we'll find one more Luandi. There we go. Perfect. All right. I think that's basically the best I can do with these characters. So with that being done, let me also quickly do my innovations because we're looking at the screen here. I'm going to just do a really standard opening for me, which is to get to town criers and grab centralized committees on the way down. So legal patronage, 2 loyalty for all characters. A system of legal sponsorship will establish a means of hierarchy within the echelons of our realm. This is a really standard opening when you have just 4 innovations, for me at least. Centralized committees, this isn't on the way down, but I want to grab this because I can, and getting this early on is great for saving PI in the future, PI being political influence. Standardizing bureaucratic tools of our governors by providing them with competent assistance will improve the effectiveness of local government by cutting inefficiency. All right. Official orders, reducing monthly tyranny. Employing skilled speakers to proclaim or decrease laws and decisions will lessen the chance of fomenting dissent in our populace. Lastly, town criers. I think this is the best early innovation you can reach with just 4 innovations available. 10% monthly PI for the rest of the game, 25% smear reputation cost. Playing as a Republic, I think Town Criers is basically required if you have access to it, because reputation smearing is a really important part of how you micromanage Senate approval. But not playing as a Republic, reputation smearing is just a handy tool available to you under certain circumstances. It's not as helpful, but it is nice to have it be reduced, and the monthly PI bonus is obviously what matters the most here. Employing skilled orders on our behalf will allow us to anonymously spread the truth about those wicked enough to act against our interests. All right, grab that, and then also while I'm thinking about monthly PI, go over to my chief and tell him to switch to Scheme Influence. I know I'm just kind of zooming through here, but I have a lot to do in this first episode. Get my ideas going as well for the PI. I want to get my tribesman output immediately, so martial ethos, ensuring that our soldiers and veterans hold a prestigious place in the social hierarchy is key to their contentment and loyalty. And we're going to also grab ordered retreat. Retreat can be far from dishonorable. Ensuring that all our warriors have a plan of action in the event of having to fall back will result in much quicker recovery when they do. Okay, that's good. Also, while we're on the screen, let's talk about the long-term goal of this campaign. So obviously we want to, take land and make our name bigger. That's what you do in Imperator Rome. But our goal here is actually a bit more particular. It is to form a steppe empire. So this campaign is going to involve some imperial ambitions. You can see here what this is going to require. I can't even fit it all on the screen. This looks like a huge amount of territory, and what it basically is, it's the 3 steppe regions. It's Mobe, Jiyu, which is in the base game, and then Liang. So Mobe is by far the biggest region. Liang is this oddly small region in between us and sort of the Chinese areas. And then Jiyu is the sort of desert region with the mountains around it. So this is a very, very significant goal, but if we achieve it, we get some really crazy advantages. So take a look at this. We form the steppe empire government form, which I should note is actually a monarchy. So what we can do with this decision is ignore the way that this game normally works, where if you play as a migratory tribe, if you want to sort of civilize and become a republic or a monarchy, you have to bite the bullet and centralize and abandon your migratory ways, become a settled tribe, and then as a settled tribe, you can then reform into one of those other types of governments. So you have to go through the settled tribe phase to kind of move up there. You have to get your centralization high enough, right? And as a migratory tribe, your centralization is always decreasing. You want it to go lower for those martial bonuses. With this decision, we can completely ignore that mechanic. And once we just have all this territory, even if we're at negative 100 centralization, we're the least centralized people on Earth, right? We have all those martial advantages that you get from being decentralized as a migratory tribe. We click this button, instant monarchy. We just adopt the government form immediately. We don't even do all those mechanics of reforming. And what this means is we can play an extremely aggressive, wide, conquest-oriented campaign up until we click the button, and then suddenly all of that territory we can then to develop and have civ level for as a monarchy, and basically enjoy the best of both worlds. Start the game in this aggressive steppe nomad style of gameplay, but then once we're really, really expansive, sort of settle down as a monarchy immediately through this decision, on top of all the other bonuses the decision gives us. And from there, become the steppe empire of the ancient age that never really existed until the Huns later on, hundreds of years later. So this is going to be a significant goal of the campaign, one that I'm not going to accomplish anytime soon, but one that we definitely are within reach of. Like, if you look at it, this is not actually that many different tags to deal with. There is going to be quite a few episodes of trying to accomplish this. Once we hit this button, we're going to be set to have a crazy game as a steppe empire going forward. So with that being said, we have to stay as a tribal government to unlock it according to the effect text there. Not sure if that's true. That's not a criteria the game is checking for mechanically, but I'm certainly going to stay as a migratory tribe until I click this button, just for thematic purposes and to make this game more interesting. Also, we get a very strong national spirit for many, many years, so we will enjoy that when we get there. We get 12 pops with our state, culture, and religion, and our capital gets center of civilization for the rest of the game. Very strong modifier. We'll also get 4 free province investments. We'll read the lore when we get to this point in the campaign. Speaking of our capital, by the way, let's talk about the terrain situation for a moment. So, the terrain around here is real bad, and I've said this earlier, but I can't stress this enough. This terrain is dire. Take a look at the, let me find it here, the simple terrain map mode. Yeah. So this is steppe terrain, this sort of light green, and steppe terrain is really bad. This is minus 25% pop capacity, plus 1 attrition, just by default, so that's already quite bad. Civ level's minus 5%. Oddly, conversion and assimilation bonuses, and that's a flat 0.50, so you're always assimilating, always converting in the steppes. Don't know exactly why this mechanic is in the game. I don't know what to make of that, but okay, I'm not going to complain about that. That's handy. And local food. Now we also have hills around here, obviously not a great type of tile for cities and whatnot. We've also got quite a bit of taiga. Taiga is worse than steppes, because you also have a movement cost penalty along with the other modifiers that steppes have, and a reduction in conversion and assimilation speed. So taiga in particular is very difficult to work with. Now fortunately for us, we start the game in control of apparently the luscious terrain within thousands of miles. This plains tile on the minor river, Longcheng, is our capital. This is going to stay our capital because this is the best tile in the region. I'm not even kidding about that. Like, we can see with the simple terrain map mode here how bad things are. There's steppe, there's hills, there's desert, there's taiga. There's every kind of terrain that's bad for cities except for this one plains tile, which is on a river, but it does also have alpine climate, as does everything else around here in the region. So overall, my normal sort of gameplay style of looking for really lush areas of the map to turn into cities, and this big focus on where my capital is and whatnot, where my different provincial capitals are and whatnot, that's not going to be something we're able to really do much in this campaign because the terrain is uniformly bad across the board. But that's true to the steppe empire mindset. We have lots of kind of bad terrain for developed, centralized cities, so until we form a steppe empire and sort of brute force our way into being a monarchy, we're going to treat all this land as basically just space to add our banner over and our color over and our name over, but not really take it too seriously. It's not land that we're going to invest in heavily. This land is just there to feed our flocks and expand our renown in this part of the world. All right, with that being said, let's go into our economy really quick. I'm going to leave this all as the default. Now, Terra Indomita does keep these Invictus sort of emergency button options, which I think, again, are not very helpful. They cost too much stability, in my opinion, not worth it. I will turn my army maintenance up, although only for the first bit here, because we're going to do a war on November 1st. Now that I've done my government organization, we can actually talk about that and do the decision, summon war council. It's not a decision, the interaction, summon war council. So I wanted to do my government organization before I did this. As you can see in this first episode, I'm kind of bouncing around different things I need to do at the start here as I try to explain everything as fast as I can here. Hopefully you're following along. Summon a war council. So summon a selection of your closest advisors to determine a good direction for our next conquest and provide a claim on a neighboring province every 10 years. So every like 450, 460, 470, October 1st, we're going to do Summon War Council on cooldown. Now, I should note that my hope is that it targets Junji. Now, there are several nations around us that are of our culture. Junji, Anhu, and then this nation over here, Jihai, are all of our culture. And then, of course, we're also of Xiongnu culture. Junji is the best option because it moves us closer to doing some region splits. And region splitting is a mechanic I've sort of discussed in previous campaigns. I don't know if I've talked about it that directly, but it's a really good part of, it's a really important meta part of planning out your conquests. Basically, when you control even a single settlement in another region other than your home region, that region spawns its own 2k levy at minimum under the control of one of your chiefs when you're playing as a tribe. And by doing region splitting, you can basically get 2,000 man armies even with one settlement. So going for these sort of regional areas to get different split armies is really good to increase your power early on. We're not really super close to the Liang region or the Ji region, but if we take on Juji, this does get us closer. We can then fight Shanma and get a bit of a region split in Liang. Now, I should note that my historic rival I've talked about a couple times, Yueshi, starts the game within 3 region splits. It's spread across 3 regions. Their home region is Jiyu. They have control of territory in the Liang region, and they have control of territory up here in the Mobe region. So Yueshi has a 6k army at minimum, and they actually have more than that because they have actually more population in their home region. So Yueshi starts the game with an absolutely crazy military advantage, which we want to try and nullify ASAP. So we want to move our way towards them, get a region split near them as well, and start to build up our power to take them on before they grow more than we do. So they're going to be our rival in the early game here for sure. With that being said, the War Council is random, and all my test games is giving me different targets. What I'm hoping is we get at least a target that has our culture so that we can conquer them, and then the population of those areas is providing us with more manpower right away because they're already of our culture, they're already of Xiongnu culture and the same religion. The best target is Junji because Junji has the most population. It is 20 Hu Xiongnu population. Jihai is 18, and then Anhu I think is 15. Yeah, 15. They've got an additional minority population of Dinglings. This War Council could also target other neighbors that aren't of our culture, like Hunyu, who's of the Arshan culture, and Dingling, which is of the Dingling culture. We'll see what we get. If it gives me just the option of Dingling or Hunyu, that's the worst option possible, but it should pick one of the 3 same culture neighbors. Ideally Junji, but I can't control this. We just have to kind of see what the RNG gives us here. So, summon the War Council. Alright, I'm already seeing Junji as an option. Alternative is Dinglings. This is going to be a pretty easy decision here. After traveling for many days, the proud members of the Xiongnu War Council are gathered together in Longcheng, ready to discuss the waging of war on new foes. Hunched over the broad table, Feng Hu, the author of several tactical treatises, Li, a well-known rogue and philanderer, and Kif Fiudi, thought by many to speak with the will of the gods, opine loudly on their chosen course of action. Over the course of the evening, Feng Hu becomes vociferous in his opinion that Dingling ought to feel the might of the Xiongnu armies, and to the surprise of many, Kifyodi has begun to agree with this method of thinking. Li ostensibly continues to promote his own agenda, insisting that Junji is ripe for conquest, citing his large network of informants in the Junji countryside. Actually lore appropriate, because Junji is our same culture, so in theory would have more contacts in Junji. Now I should note that Feng Hu is one of my chiefs, and Li is my other chief. So it looks like we're going to get one of our chiefs to like our decision here. Li does have slightly higher loyalty, so this is not great, because we'll lose loyalty with Feng Hu. But we shouldn't lose enough to make him disloyal, which is important here. And then this guy's the High Priest. I don't care about his loyalty at all. So we're going to stand with Li and ready the armies to march for Junji. Lose loyalty on Feng Hu and our priest, and then Li gains loyalty. Also, I should note that Feng Hu has 6 martial, Li has 8, so Li is our more important chief martial-wise, and they're both, of course, better than our actual tribal chief, Jisoo. So we're going to stand with Li, ready the armies. And in fact, we will literally ready the armies while I'm thinking about it, because we will be going to war with them. Maybe this episode, we'll see how far we get. Raise our army in southwest Anhuhe. Now you'll notice we actually have more than just 2,000. That's because our actual levy is fairly large. We actually have 7 light infantry, 4 light cavalry, and a supply train. I think this is another change from the full mechanical overhaul mod that Terra Indomita integrates. It changes how the levies work. However, even with this change, region splitting is still going to be important for increasing our levy size, so that's not going to change. Going to make our way over. It should actually only take about a half a month to move over, so that's pretty manageable. with that being done there, and then they're going to have really high morale thanks to our increased pay. Next month, we'll go to war on November 1st when we're allowed to against Junji. Now, something I need to do as well is prepare for war with them by picking up some allies. I think for the early game, I probably want to ally with Ueshi, even though we're historic rivals. They would agree to it. They are a different religion than us, but they still would agree to be my ally. This way, I can kind of try and rein them in and stop them from taking land in wars that I'm in. I'll have to be a little careful about this, but if I'm allied with them, that gives me more control over when I want to fight them. Not that I think the AI will almost ever declare war on you if they're a similar size to. I think the AI tends to be pretty protective in this game, and it's not that aggressive. But I think these guys are a good ally because they also bring in their giant army, so we can make use of it to strengthen ourselves up to then fight them later on. So we're going to ally with Ueshi, and I think we should do this now. Yeah, let's do this now. We have an additional 2 ally slots because we were on neutral stance. We're actually going to leave neutral stance fairly early on. I don't think I need another ally aside from Ueshi. The only other person that would help me in the Junji fight is Shanma, who I actually want to attack after Junji, though after I then take on my other cultural neighbors. I could ally with Heizhongxi if they would agree to it, which it looks like they actually would agree to it. This is a Chinese nation over here. It's a Chinese settled tribe. I guess they could help out a little bit. They'd have to cross over the desert here. The one thing they could also do is distract. I guess I could actually just also ally with Hunyu. I'll have to think about this a little bit. Let's see actually what my mission tree ends up saying about whether I need to take Ulaangom. So let me do the mission tree now. Matter of Mobe. Just bouncing around all over the place here. Our fortunes await in foreign lands. The Mobe region has been considered part of our borders, yet much of it remains beyond our control. Make sure that it is brought under our influence one way or another. So we have to completely control the region of Mobe. Again, that's this region here. So what I'm looking to see here is if the province that Hunyu is in is part of the mission tree to finish the Matter of Mobe. If it's not, I can ally with them safely and come back for them later. Alright, so on October 1st of next year, I'll get claims on Jiankun, Kuvsgul, and Jihai. And these are... So Guyan is my home... actually, no, not Guyan. Kuvsgul is this one up here. Guyan is my home province. Let's see. Jiankun is this one up here in the corner. And then Jihai is this one here that Jihai's in. Okay, so Ulaangom isn't in the initial thing. Okay, this gives me claims on Huzhe. This gives me claims... Okay, this gives me claims on Ulaangom. So Ulaangom is going to give me PI. I can probably ally with them in the early game, and that's probably going to be fine. Actually, let me go back to this. Making against Kuvsgul, Dingling. I could ally with... Guyan, actually. They're in a different province, the Trans Baikal province, which my mission tree doesn't give me claims on directly, I don't think. Trans Baikal, I don't think so. Also noting, Triumph Mobe gives me a... okay, actually, hold on. Where is it targeting? It gives me a city in South Anhuhe, which is in the hills. I might actually keep that city, because hills are actually a better terrain tile for me than I'm going to find otherwise. Sometimes in my test games, this gives me a city in Longcheng, which is great, and it's not doing that this time. However, this Triumph mission, every time you reload the game, it changes sometimes where it targets to put the city. So we'll check back on this in the future once we're closer to clicking this button to see where it's selecting. I don't need to get a city through this, but getting a free city is obviously pretty handy, so we'll come back to this later. Whatever the case. Yeah, okay, that looks fine. So I think what I should do then is I should actually ally with Guyan, if they would agree to it, which they would. Guyan might be more of a permanent ally, because I'm not going to... Yeah, they don't have any presence in Dingling or Guyan, oddly enough, despite being called Guyan, which means that I'm not going to have to fight them for control of any of these areas necessarily. So let's ally with Guyan. Yes, because we're probably not going to change our diplomatic policy for a moment now until we have more dominance in the local area. Okay, so that's our diplomacy thing. Leave that as it is. We've done this already. Our great families are the Luandi families, who we're playing as, the Huyan family, and the Dugu family. Talking about our mission tree. Okay, import-wise, we just want to import for base metals to get a surplus from our local base metals for light infantry offense for our army. Trade with the Qin? The Qin? I think they're called pronounced Qin. And then we want to trade, I think, just for silk, for money, again with the Qin. Nothing too complicated to set up there. Okay, Omen. Now, it looks, and this is been the case in my test games, the 4 deities that are actually we start with are the 4 best deities for this religion, in my opinion. I could go through all of them just to prove it, but I'm sure you'll trust me about this. You can download the mod and check yourself if you want to, but I think for the sake of time, I'll just pick one that I think will make the most sense for the first 5 years. And that one I think is probably going to be Kizagan. This is going to help diminish how much attrition we take from... Actually, that being said, we're going to take so much attrition from being in the steppes. Well, actually, we'll be in the desert. I think this... Well, I think Akana might be a little better. I think I'd rather get manpower than reduce the manpower cost from attrition. So let's go for Akana for the first 5 years. Akana is the daughter of Kera, the god of the earth's fertility and life in the mythology of the D, who urged Kera to begin creation from the River of Time. All right. Okay, and with that being said, let's now talk about something added into this mod by the integration of the... actually, I'm not sure which integration brings this in, but let's talk about something in this mod that's different from the base game, and that is the character focus system. So this is something straight out of CK3, very, very similar to the way it works in Crusader Kings 3. And basically, it works how you think. You pick a focus, you pick one of these options. There's 4 sort of sub-options for what kind of focus you want to do. That usually gives you 1 more in that stat and maybe a different bonus. You then gain experience points, which you can then spend to get perk points, or you get perk points automatically. You can then spend the perk points wherever you want to, either in that same tree that you were gaining experience in or somewhere else. And the perks are lifelong for that character. So the perks have various modifiers, or they affect the area of the capital and whatnot. So I could go through all these different perks and whatnot right now. I don't really have time to, but I will talk about them as they become relevant. What I will say is that for this first bit of time here, we're just going to go for a martial perk, or a martial focus to give ourselves more martial on our chief. I think we're just going to go for command focus, and then we'll get perk points later on. So with all that being done, I think we're ready to unpause here. I already changed my scheme. I think we're looking fine. Did I forget to do anything? Oh yeah, laws. Let's talk about laws. So we're playing with below 0 centralization because we're a migratory tribe. We want to keep lowering centralization. We can actually be at negative 100 centralization and still do the step empire decision, and that's not going to have any problem. So we want to get to negative 100 ASAP to further increase those scaling military benefits you see on the screen there. So our options are on the left side of the tree here. The right side is the sort of options that increase centralization. So if you want to go into a settled tribe from being migratory, you stay on this side. Over here, we have a couple options here. I think that the actual reduction of centralization is pretty important because it's directly affecting the scaling military modifiers, which means stuff that further increases the centralization decrease is really important. That being said, national tax 10% isn't as good as tribesman output 12%, so that's worth taking over that. Omen power is, I think that is better than this one, especially for early on, so my Omen is literally increasing output. However, Omen power 10% will add less output, because Omen power affects the Omen, compared to just doing the literal one that adds 12% output. So let's do property ownership as our first one here. We can always come back and do the Omen power later. I think the 12% right away is better than the 10% Omen power right away. So the right of a family to pass down property must be enshrined in law, that we might please those among us who possess a noble and lengthy lineage. Also, the better UI integration into this mod kind of messes up the screens like this. There's just black on black, so just remember, it's whatever is said over here is what it's restating here, so hope you don't mind that. Okay, that'll further reduce centralization. Good stuff. And with that being done, I think we're now ready to get going here. Yes. Let's unpause the game and get to it. Scholar of the Divine. We have an event on the second day of the game. Tuman Kilin has, by all accounts, remained a Scholar of the Divine man for much of his life. It caused some embarrassment, therefore, when he was discovered extorting a local temple to an egregiously unreasonable degree. Before reprimanding Tuman, it must be said that it would be expeditious to our effort to influence him if we were to brush this under the table. Wow, okay, this is a very good event to get on the second day of the campaign. This is like beyond my control, so this is just very lucky. This is basically free, because this character is just some guy, so I don't care about his loyalty at all. He has no power base, so I don't care about that. 15 loyalty for free, or 30 loyalty for 10 corruption on Jisoo. 10 corruption on him The problem with this, so corruption will increase his wage, which is already increased from her heritage. I don't care about that at all, because him getting more money only helps me because I'm playing as him, so his personal wealth can be used for things. That's not the issue. What is the issue is that increased corruption will reduce the loyalty of provinces that he's the governor of, which, because he's the governor of Mobe, is all of the provinces of Mobe, which is our home region. And our capital province, Guyan, is always at 100 loyalty because it's the capital province. However, every other province we get will calculate its loyalty based on his corruption, on Jisu's corruption. So him having personal corruption, especially because we can't have default corruption reduction from that settled tribe idea slot of having the anti-corruption idea, means that we need to be a bit more careful with giving characters corruption when it's going to affect the game too much. So we actually are going to go for the option that doesn't really have a downside over this much bigger PI gain. So a slap on the wrist ought to suffice. Very, very lucky first event there. Kind of surprised, but I will absolutely take it. All right, 18th of October. I think we're going to be in good shape here. Whew. All right, I'm excited. This is going to be a really fun new campaign. Very different from the ones that I've done in the past. All right, what kind of weight do we have here? Supply limit. We have enough. Okay. So I'm just going to have Jisu's army actually lead here. Even though he's not the highest marshal, the other people with him will take charge in the fight. I just want the army with the supply train to be the one calling the shots here. So we'll see if these guys pick up any allies in the next couple days. Ideally, they don't, and we can just move in, bring Yueishe in with us to help us out. The target is going to, I think, be... Let's see. What do I have a claim on specifically? I think it's on the whole nation. I don't think it's province-based. Let me see here. On Junji. Is Junji an actual? No. So I may be able, yeah, I think the War Council gives you a claim on all of their provinces, so I think we can target the Guyan thing, which is part of our home province, by the way. This is included, because this is in Guyan. Let me show you like this. Yeah, this is part of Guyan. And what this would do is we can then get this immediately. Hopefully not depopulate it. It's got only one tribesman, so there's a shot we might depopulate this, which could be irritating. But there's not much we can do. We just have to take this and then move on south to the Dong Junji Mountain, where their capital is. Whatever the case, we can always colonize this fairly easily from nearby. We can move people over. We'll deal with that later. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm excited. Also, take a look at that map at the bottom right. This is a little goofy, but this is the only way they can fit everything in the size of that map. Sounding out the opposition. Debate has raged for many years over our rocky relationship with the nation-states resident in Mobe. Guyan, a nation many in Xiongnu call a friend, stands well placed to provide us with assistance in our endeavors to control Mobe. Actually true this time, because Guyan is my ally. Many of our more warlike advisors, however, seem intent on burning all bridges and laying waste to Guyan lands in an effort to further advance our cause. Benevolent image, free opinion with Guyan, gotta love it. Actually handy, because Guyan is going to stay my ally for the early game here. All right, November 1st, loyalty problems with one of our chiefs. We need to take care of this immediately. What's the problem here? I think it's because he's leading troops. The Counselor of Nord's really hurting him. Yeah, it's the power base mainly, and he's paranoid. That's great. I have no control over the chief traits at all, so I think my best bet here is to exalt him. I guess that would upset the other chief. What's the loyalty of the other chief like? 66, yeah, he can deal with it. Exalting is better because it doesn't give this guy corruption. Although chief corruption actually will only affect wage. I guess it might affect loyalty later on. I think free hands is probably fine. Well, he's pretty young is the issue. Well, he's not that young. He is pretty young. I just have no way to reduce corruption, so I want to avoid it as much as possible. I'll go ahead and I'll exalt him. That's perfectly fine money-wise. This will take care of his loyalty for quite a while. There we go. Exalted Feng Hu Huyan. Oops. Alright. Clear war. Gonna go... Oh yeah, so we're gonna take Guyan. So we are just gonna take the thing that we're directly bordering. I guess this makes sense. We just target the bordering province, because that's how the War Council operates. You target neighboring people. Alright, gonna call on our allies, just... Not that I think I really need to, but just because this will boost up my relations with them. I think that allying with Guyan is the most sensible thing based on the way our mission tree is structured, like we talked about earlier. Allying Yueishe is mostly just so I can kind of keep an eye on them. I want them to... I don't want to be caught off guard by some sort of giant conquest they do, and I can at the very least keep them scoped out and have vision on what they're doing, just by having them be my friends, and then eventually, of course, we'll take them on. Let's go to war. Take Guion. All right, here we go. Fastest war declaration. Hold on. Oh yeah, you didn't. I literally did this wrong. Okay, I'm stupid. All right, hold on. Attach, not. Yeah, I set them both allow following. Okay, that's good. Speed this up, and I think we just proceed here. 25th of November or so is when we get there. All right, let's see what we can do in the next 10 minutes. Also, I should note that in this mod, there are a few more building options. We'll take a look at this in the future. Not relevant at the moment. Also, fort is for free. Okay, so I'm hoping I don't depopulate this, but there's a good shot I will, because it just has one population. It is what it is. We need to get this, we need to attempt to get it, because this is technically the war target. But we shall see what will happen. Once I see some armies, I'll slow it down, but I'm just on a higher speed, because there's nothing happening around us at the moment. Also, I didn't even note this earlier, but my capital province has encouraged trade active, and the other ones have acquisition of wealth. And this is all perfectly fine. I'm not going to tweak with this. I'm not going to tweak it right now. Okay, very lucky stroke here. We did not actually kill the tribesmen, so we got to keep this. And this is the war target. So I think now what we do is we now go ahead and continue charging down into the desert. Now, with this army, I can just do an assault on Dongjuji Mountain and then end the war immediately, because that's the rest of their territory. Assaulting is something that I didn't really do a lot in previous campaigns, but I learned in my kind of, hiatus when I've been playing this game privately. I've learned how powerful using assaults can really be. In a situation like this, where there's no need to siege this and just take lots of attrition damage, assaults are actually better if you know how to use the micro correctly, where you don't... Once you do the assault and you have your armies low on manpower, as long as you end the war and lower the levies before the manpower pool has a chance to redirect into the armies, then you preserve the manpower pool. So we'll hopefully see that in a moment. The thing is, their army's probably there. We'll see. Jisoo, always quick to come up with bright ideas, clever solutions, and cunning plans. Jisoo Luandi is well regarded as one of the greatest minds of his generation. Assertive. Okay, that sounds like a good trait for him. Let me see what this does. Assertive. 5% province income, 5% commerce income. That's not what I thought. I thought this would be a martial trait, but I guess I'm perfectly fine with this. Also, note, my wife is named Hushikwan. She does not have any problematic traits as a wife. I've got two sons, or two daughters. I have two sons, Wuj Huliyu and Wuji Hushizhudi. Yes. My beloved children. I know exactly what their names are. Don't make me say it again, because I won't remember. But whatever the case, let's just come down here. Probably find them in the desert. I guess I can take a fight up at the mountain. The thing is this actually... Oh, hold on. We're locked in, so we have to do this attack anyways. This is perfectly fine. Probably can't... I don't think this would be a stack wipe. It might be a stack wipe. Also, this is literally a mountain, so I actually don't want to do a fight here if I can help it. I guess we'll see what happens when we arrive, which will be on the 8th of... Let's slow this down. 8th of January. Okay, there's their other 2K. Oops. Oh, that was a stack wipe. Okay. Actually, I think we might be able to stack wipe these guys, or they'll leave, which is also perfectly fine. Yeah, they're going to leave in time. It's going to take us a month to make this crossing as well. So that is perfectly good. These guys are definitely going to help out a lot. I mostly have them in the war just for alliance building. The matter of Mobe. The region of Mobe has remained a valuable source of trade and commerce for our nation for many long years. Many amongst the clan council insist that such a bountiful land would serve much better purpose if fully integrated under the Xiongnu banner. Of course, as with all matters of state, many are in opposition, claiming that a healthy relationship with our neighbors is far more important than a wanton land grab. The leaders of each side have presented their arguments and asked for an arbitration as to which method would be more appropriate in our dealings with the various states resident in Mobe. We long for friendship and cooperation. Speed this up. Alright, 11th of February. Let's see if they respond. They don't really have a lot of forces to work with, so I don't think we're going to have too much trouble. And hopefully we can come in here, do the assaults, and then once the assault's done, finish the war basically right away. Wait for these guys to arrive as well. Here we go. Okay, so it looks like our highest martial chief is leading the force. That makes sense. I don't think they're going to react to this. Let's just do the assault right now. Unless these mods have really rebalanced how assaults work, this should be basically free against 400. I guess we're about to find out here if I've made a terrible mistake. I don't think I have. This seems pretty similar to what I remember from Invictus. That's about what I would expect, yeah. So we've finished the siege at Xiongnu Mountain. Now we just wait here for a moment for all this to convert over, then we finish the war with a full occupation, and yeah, easy as that. This is, by the way, why I wanted to attack Juji first. I figured this war would basically go like this and we'd have no trouble. And are there any other provincial capitals around here? No, there's not. Alright. There we go. And that should be that. Alright, just like that, we're about to almost double our territorial expansion here with one very quick war against Junji. Alright, so Junji, so this text here is a different font. Okay, very strange. Junji Guyan to Xiongnu, and Junji Fuyangju to Xiongnu. This will give us 10 AE, so that's quite a lot of AE. I think this has been rebalanced, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that, but otherwise this is perfectly fine. The Junji elite. So these guys are of our culture. However, I don't think there's any serious need to bring their nobles into our government because there's actually not that many things we can do with them. I guess I could make them governors, but there's no oceans around here to make them admirals. I can't make them generals because we have our tribal chief generals. And all of my officer positions are basically pretty much fully set up. Like, for example, if I had no martial characters at all, it'd be worth keeping the elites to maybe be your martial characters, but I think things are basically fine. Like, yeah, we could technically find a better character to be a wise one, but this is a low priority. Like, 8 and 9 and 10 is more than enough. So let's go ahead and actually sell them into slavery by imprisoning them and then selling them. Make a lot of money from that. Imprison their leaders, let the rest disappear. All right. Out of the way. All right, the D local power of Junji accepts our generous peace offer. Junji Guyan to Xiongnu. Junji Fuyanju to Xiongnu. All right. Xiongnu has expanded dramatically, and while we're talking about slavery, let's go ahead and do just that. Sell these characters off into slavery really quick. My threshold is going to be if they're like 8. Actually, at this early stage, I can gain some characters. So let's just sell everyone, unless they're like 6 or below. I won't sell them. I'll release them. So I'll release you, or if they're a minor, you have to release them. All right, there we go. I think that's everybody. Gave us quite a bit of money. There we go. That's everyone. All right, so we'll take a look at our new holdings in the next episode. We also may keep our army up and use it for another war. Probably not, though, because we don't actually have any other claims ready to go. So we will go ahead and lower our forces, actually. And also lower our army maintenance down to decreased pay for the integrated culture happiness. That's all the Xiongnu's. They're going to be happier with that. Yeah, so overall, and also reduce fort maintenance. Okay, we'll take a look at maybe changing around the capital next episode, but that's going to be it for this first episode of the Xiongnu Campaign, a very crowded, action-packed hour of a first episode. We actually fit in an entire war into the first episode of a misadventure campaign. Clearly, things are starting off here on a good foot. Very excited about my own performance here. I think I'm playing at like peak performance here with Imperator Rome, and I think that my practice with this mod off camera is going to really help out here in making this a great campaign to return to the channel with after my long hiatus. So that's going to be it for this first episode of the Xiongnu Campaign. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next week for the next episode and further step horde action with this campaign. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.